In the heart of Charleston, South Carolina, a shadow fell over the quaint, sun-kissed streets. The Suar family, once a beacon of happiness and normalcy, found themselves entangled in a tale of betrayal so profound it echoed through the corridors of time. James Reggie Suar and Carol Alford, born and raised in the warm embrace of Charleston, shared a bond that transcended the usual narratives of high school sweethearts. Their story wasn't just about love. It was about a connection so deep that it defied the odds, a bond that promised to withstand the tests of time. As children, they played under the watchful eyes of moss-draped oaks. As teenagers, they whispered promises under the starlit sky. Their love was the kind of story poets wrote about, and songs were sung of, pure, innocent, and unbreakable. But as they stood at the threshold of their lives, where childhood dreams melded into adult realities, a cruel twist of fate awaited them. The world outside their haven in Charleston was tumultuous, unpredictable, and unforgiving. As they dreamed of a future together, a dark cloud loomed on the horizon, threatening to engulf their hopes and aspirations. The fabric of their reality began to unravel when James, barely out of high school, received the call to serve his country. The Vietnam War, a distant thunder, now roared at their doorstep. The promise of a future together, of wedding bells and shared dreams, was put on an indefinite hold. Carol, left behind, clung to the letters James sent, each word a lifeline in the turbulent sea of uncertainty. But as the war raged on, the letters became infrequent, then stopped. The silence was deafening, filling Carol's heart with dread and despair. The community whispered, speculated, and mourned, but Carol held on to hope. She refused to believe that the boy who had promised her the world under the stars could be gone. But as days turned to weeks, and weeks to months, even the strongest of hopes began to wane. Meanwhile, James, scared by war and marked by battles, faced his own demons. The horrors he witnessed, the pain he endured, would change him forever. Unknown to Carol, he fought not just for his country, but for his very survival, both physically and mentally. In Charleston, life moved on. Carol, her heart a shadow of its former self, tried to piece together a life from the fragments left behind. But the ghost of her first love of James lingered in every corner, in every whisper of the wind, in every setting sun. The story of James and Carol was not just a tale of young love. It was a testament to the enduring power of the human heart and the unyielding strength of hope in the face of the cruelest betrayals. Their journey, unbeknownst to them, was just beginning. A journey that would lead them through darkness and light, through unimaginable pain, and towards a reunion that defied all odds. In the heart of Charleston, the echoes of their love and betrayal resonated, a haunting melody that would soon unravel a horrifying truth, shaking the very foundations of what they believed to be their reality. In the wake of James's departure, the vibrant world Carol Alford had known began to crumble, brick by brick, into a labyrinth of shadows. The once bright-eyed girl from Charleston found herself walking a path lined with trials that would test the very limits of her spirit. Carol's life, in James's absence, became a montage of resilience and heartache. She threw herself into her studies, seeking solace in the pages of books and the hallways of academia. Her heart, though scarred, refused to surrender to despair. She held on to the hope that James would return, and they would pick up the pieces of their shattered dreams. However, fate, with its twisted sense of irony, had other plans. Carol met a man at the Charleston Air Force Base where she worked, a man who seemed to promise a new beginning. But this new chapter was far from the fairy tale she had once dreamed of. The marriage, plagued by shadows of abuse and torment, soon crumbled, leaving Carol more broken than before. The echoes of James's love seemed like a distant dream, a whisper from a past life. Carol struggled to find her footing in a world that seemed determined to knock her down at every turn. Her spirit, once vibrant and unyielding, began to wane under the weight of her trials. Yet, in the darkest of times, a flicker of light emerged. Carol remarried in 1975, a union that blessed her with a daughter, Rhonda. This new life, a beacon of hope, rekindled a spark within her. Rhonda became her anchor, her reason to brave the storms that continued to rage around her. But the shadows weren't done with Carol yet. Her second marriage, marred by the same patterns of abuse and despair, fell apart. Her husband's drinking and violent outbursts became a daily terror. The light at the end of the tunnel seemed to flicker and fade with each passing day. In 1987, Carol's life took a turn for the worse. Her abusive ex-husband, in a drunken rage, arrived at her doorstep, his intentions as dark as the night. In front of their 10-year-old daughter, he unleashed his fury, leaving Carol in a pool of her own blood, her life hanging by a thread. The neighbors, alerted by the commotion, called for help. Carol was rushed to the hospital, her condition critical. The doctors battled to save her, but the scars she bore were not just physical. She lost her sight in one eye, and her body, once full of life, was left broken and disabled. In the years that followed, Carol's health spiraled. She battled liver cancer, a cruel souvenir from the night she almost lost her life. Every day was a struggle, a fight to keep the darkness at bay. Yet through it all, Carol's spirit, though battered, never broke. She took a job as a call center operator, refusing to let her circumstances define her. Her life, a tapestry of pain and perseverance, became a testament to her unbreakable will. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, Carol Alford, a survivor in every sense of the word, faced her days with a quiet strength. The echoes of her past, both sweet and bitter, intertwined in the melody of her life. Little did she know, the winds of fate were about to bring a ghost from her past back into her life, reawakening long-buried emotions, and setting the stage for a reunion that would stir the waters of her soul. While Carol braved her storms in Charleston, James "Reggie" Suar waged his own unseen wars, far from the warm glow of their childhood memories. The Vietnam War, a conflict that had ripped him from the arms of his beloved, was only the beginning of a lifelong battle with shadows that followed him back home. James's time in Vietnam was a harrowing descent into chaos. The jungles, filled with the cacophony of war, became a crucible that forged and fractured him in equal measure. He bore witness to horrors that words could scarcely describe, horrors that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The young soldier, who had left Charleston with dreams of returning to his high school sweetheart, found himself fighting not just for his country, but for his very survival. In the midst of battle, a cruel twist of fate struck. James was severely injured, a wound that threatened to claim his leg, and with it, his hopes of a future he had once envisioned. As he lay in a makeshift hospital bed, his thoughts often drifted back to Carol. In his heart, he held on to the image of her smiling face, a beacon in the darkness that engulfed him. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the reality of his situation began to sink in. James's name, due to a tragic clerical error, was mistakenly listed among the fallen. Back in Charleston, his family mourned, and Carol, the love of his life, was left to grapple with a loss that was not real, yet felt devastatingly so. When James finally returned home, the world he came back to was starkly different from the one he had left. He found himself a ghost in his own life, his existence erased, his love mourned and moved on. The pain of his physical wounds paled in comparison to the agony of this realization. Life in Charleston, once full of promise and dreams, now felt like walking through a landscape of memories. James struggled to reintegrate, his body and mind scarred by the war. He battled diabetes and other chronic conditions, reminders of the price he had paid. In a bid to rebuild his life, James married, but the shadows of his past loomed large. His injuries from the war rendered him unable to fulfill his dream of becoming a father, adding another layer of pain to his already burdened heart. The marriage, strained under the weight of unspoken sorrows and unhealed wounds, eventually crumbled. James took a job as a laborer on the local railroad, a far cry from the dreams he once harbored. Each day was a reminder of what could have been, of the life he had lost. He lived in solitude, his heart a fortress, guarding the remnants of a love that he believed was forever lost. As the years passed, James's life became a quiet routine, a world away from the young man who once dreamed under the Charleston stars. But fate, ever unpredictable, was weaving a tapestry that would soon bring him face to face with a past he thought was long buried. In the fall of 2000, a simple phone call at work would shatter the walls he had built around his heart, reawakening long-dormant feelings and setting in motion a reunion that would stir the embers of a love that had never truly died. The year 2000 marked a new millennium, but for Carol Alford and James Suar, it was the year that fate decided to turn the page back to a chapter long thought closed. The twist of destiny began with an unexpected encounter, one that would bridge the vast chasm of time and space that had separated two long-lost lovers. Carol, now adapting to life as a call center operator, had found a semblance of peace amidst her trials. Her voice, warm and comforting, became a familiar presence to the customers she assisted. Little did she know that one of these routine calls would become a key to unlocking her past. On an ordinary autumn day, as Carol answered calls in her usual compassionate manner, a voice on the other end of the line stopped her cold. It was a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of her memories, a voice that once spoke of love and dreams under the Charleston sky. James, on the other side of the call, had reached out for assistance with a simple inquiry, unaware that he was about to come face to face with a ghost from his past. As they conversed, something in Carol's voice stirred a sense of familiarity in him, a whisper of something once known and deeply cherished. In a moment of boldness, driven by an unexplainable intuition, Carol addressed the caller by his full name. The silence that followed was heavy with 1,000 unspoken words, 1,000 memories flooding back. James, taken aback, timidly asked how she knew his name. Carol, overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions, burst into tears. Through her sobs, she revealed her identity, the girl from high school, the girl he had once planned a future with. The phone line became a conduit for their shared tears and unspoken longing. Words failed them, but the connection that had once been so strong was reignited in an instant. They were two souls, separated by decades, finding each other in the most unexpected of ways. The revelation that they were both still living in Charleston, their childhood haven, set the stage for a meeting that was 38 years overdue. The anticipation of seeing each other again after such a long separation was both exhilarating and terrifying. For Carol, the night before the meeting was a whirlwind of emotions. She was no longer the young beauty James remembered, but the scars she bore were badges of her resilience. She wanted to look her best, to rekindle the flame that had once burned so brightly between them. James, too, felt the weight of the years. The war had changed him, left him marked and weary. But the prospect of seeing Carol again, of reconnecting with a love that had never truly faded, gave him a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. Their reunion, 38 years in the making, was a moment suspended in time. They met, their eyes telling stories their words could not. They spoke of joys and sorrows, of the paths their lives had taken, of the love that had remained a silent companion through the years. The spark between them was reignited, burning away the years of separation. They began to see each other every day, eager to make up for lost time. Their love, once a tender flame, now roared back to life, a testament to the enduring power of the heart. In a whirlwind of romance reminiscent of their youth, Carol and James decided to move in together, and within 5 months, they were married. Carol moved into James's home in the Riverland Terrace neighborhood, and together they began a new chapter, one that they had been denied all those years ago. Their union was a balm to their wounded hearts, a second chance at a life they had once dreamed of. But as they settled into their new life together, they were unaware that trouble was brewing just next door, trouble that would soon shatter the peace of their hard-won happiness. As Carol and James embarked on their new life together in the Riverland Terrace neighborhood, they were blissfully unaware of the dark undercurrents swirling in the house next door. Their neighbors, the Cole family, would soon play a pivotal role in a series of events that would shake the foundations of the Suars' renewed happiness. Tiffany Cole, the patriarch of the family next door, was a man marked by his own battles. Like James, he was a Vietnam War veteran, but his war wounds had confined him to a wheelchair. The scars of war ran deep, and Stephen's life was a constant struggle with the ghosts of his past. Natalie, Stephen's wife, found her own escape in work and the company of friends, often spending her time away from home. The neglect left their daughter, Tiffany, to fend for herself, a young girl lost in the shadows of her parents' troubled lives. Tiffany Cole, a teenager still in high school, found herself adrift in a world that seemed to offer her little. Her home life was a storm of neglect and unspoken pain, a storm that Carol, ever compassionate, noticed. Carol, with her innate kindness, reached out to Tiffany, seeing in her a reflection of her own troubled past. She invited the young girl into her home, offering her a place at their table, a gesture of warmth in Tiffany's otherwise cold world. Over time, Carol's generosity extended beyond simple meals. She began to treat Tiffany almost like a daughter, buying her clothes, giving her small amounts of money, and offering her the kind of attention she lacked at home. To Carol, Tiffany was a young soul in need, and her heart, so full of love and empathy, saw an opportunity to make a difference in the girl's life. James, too, welcomed Tiffany with open arms, empathizing with the young girl's plight. He saw in her a kindred spirit, someone who, like him, had been touched by the ravages of war, albeit indirectly. In 2004, when the Suars decided to sell their Chevrolet Lumina minivan, Tiffany saw it as an opportunity to gain some independence. Financially strapped, she asked if she could buy the vehicle in installments. Carol and James, wanting to help, agreed to sell it to her for a nominal amount, a gesture that further cemented their role as benefactors in Tiffany's life. The Suars, in their kindness, failed to see the brewing storm behind Tiffany's grateful smiles. They were unaware of the tumultuous undercurrents running through the Cole household, and how these undercurrents would soon spill over into their lives. As Carol and James settled into their life together, their past hardships seemingly behind them, they remained oblivious to the fact that their acts of kindness were planting the seeds for a tragedy that would test the very limits of their love and resilience. The shadow cast by the house next door was growing, and soon it would envelop the Suars in a darkness more profound than anything they had faced before. The early 2000s marked a period of significant change for Carol and James. Despite the joys of their reunion and marriage, their health began to decline, prompting a decision that would alter the course of their lives dramatically. Doctors recommended a warmer climate for their ailments, leading the couple to make a pivotal decision. They would move to the sunny state of Florida. This decision, born out of necessity, was tinged with both hope and apprehension. Florida, with its balmy breezes and soothing ocean air, promised a respite from the health challenges that had increasingly plagued their lives. The couple envisioned a peaceful existence, a tranquil retirement in a setting that seemed like paradise compared to the hustle and bustle of Charleston. Selling their spacious home in Charleston, Carol and James embarked on this new chapter with optimism. They purchased a property in Jacksonville, Florida's largest city, known for its sprawling parks and gorgeous beaches. It was a place where they hoped to find peace and perhaps recapture some of the carefree joy of their youth. In Jacksonville, the couple settled into their new home, embracing the change with open arms. They bought a new Lincoln Town car, a symbol of their new start, and began to make plans for their future together. It was a time of renewed hope, a time to make up for the years they had lost. Carol, ever the doting mother, maintained a close relationship with her adult daughter, Rhonda. She would call Rhonda daily, sharing stories of their new life, discussing plans, and relaying the mundane details that make up the tapestry of life. These calls became a comforting ritual for both mother and daughter, a way to stay connected despite the distance. However, in June 2005, this routine was abruptly broken. Carol didn't call Rhonda, and when Rhonda tried to reach her mother, There was no answer. At first, Rhonda attributed this to a simple oversight or a temporary disruption. But as the hours turned into a day, and then another, worry began to set in. Rhonda's attempts to reach her mother and James became increasingly frantic. Calls went unanswered, and a sense of foreboding began to grow. Something was amiss, and the silence on the other end of the line was a stark contrast to the daily conversations that had become such a staple of their relationship. Determined to uncover the truth, Rhonda decided to take matters into her own hands. She embarked on a journey to Jacksonville, a drive that would take her hours, each minute stretching out with worry and fear. What had happened to her mother and stepfather? Upon arriving at her mother's home in Jacksonville, Rhonda was met with a scene that sent chills down her spine. The house was eerily quiet, the door ajar, and her mother's car nowhere to be seen. Something was terribly wrong. The interior of the house told a story of a life abruptly interrupted. A table set for two, with food that looked days old, hinted at a meal that was never finished. The disarray within the house suggested a hasty departure, or worse, a struggle. Rhonda's heart raced as she called out for her mother and James, but the silence that greeted her was a grim answer. The medications, vital for both Carol and James, lay untouched, an ominous sign that they hadn't left of their own volition. In a panic, Rhonda contacted the police. The serene life that Carol and James had envisioned in Florida had turned into a nightmare, the beginning of a mystery that would unravel a chilling plot, revealing the depths of betrayal and the darkness that had been lurking just next door. The sudden and mysterious disappearance of Carol and James Suar plunged their family and the local community into a state of alarm and bewilderment. Rhonda's distress call set off a series of events that would soon reveal a sinister plot, rooted in betrayal and greed. The police promptly launched an investigation, treating the case with the urgency it demanded. The Suars, beloved by many and known for their kindness, seemed to have vanished into thin air. The discovery of their untouched medications and the abandoned meal painted a picture of an unexpected and abrupt departure. Rhonda, distraught and desperate for answers, cooperated fully with the authorities. She provided them with every detail that might help in locating her mother and stepfather. The police, in turn, put out an alert for the missing couple and their car, initiating a search that spanned the state of Florida. As the investigation deepened, the police scrutinized the couple's financial records, hoping to find clues. It was then that a series of suspicious activities came to light. Bank transactions showed that money had been withdrawn from the Suars' accounts after they had stopped making contact with Rhonda. Surveillance footage from ATMs where the withdrawals were made revealed a shocking twist. The person withdrawing the money was not Carol or James, but a young man, unrecognizable and seemingly unconnected to the couple. The plot thickened when it was discovered that phone calls had been made to banks from a number that didn't belong to the Suars. In these calls, individuals posing as Carol and James attempted to gain access to their accounts. The voices were too young, too unfamiliar to be those of the missing couple. This revelation pointed to a chilling possibility. The Suars had been victims of a crime, possibly abducted by those who were now impersonating them. The police intensified their efforts, knowing that time was of the essence in cases of abduction. The break in the case came when the investigators traced the suspicious phone calls. They led to a rented Mazda RX-8, registered in the name of Tiffany Cole, the young neighbor who Carol and James had treated almost like a daughter. The realization that Tiffany might be involved in the disappearance of the Suars was a shocking and disheartening twist. Carol and James had opened their hearts and home to her, offering kindness and support in her times of need. How could she be implicated in such a heinous act? Armed with this new information, the police moved swiftly. They located the Mazda RX-8 at a hotel in Charleston, and a team was dispatched to confront the occupants. What they found was a scene of careless indulgence. The hotel room was strewn with new purchases, evidence of a spending spree funded by the Suars' stolen money. Inside the room were Tiffany Cole, her boyfriend Michael J. Jackson, and a third accomplice. Alan Lyndall Wade. The trio, caught off guard by the police raid, were arrested on the spot. The evidence found in the room was damning. The Suars bank cards, a laptop, items of jewelry, and pawn shop receipts all pointed to their involvement in the Suars' disappearance. As the young perpetrators were taken into custody, the grim reality of the situation began to unfold. Carol and James, two souls who had endured so much and had finally found happiness in each other, had fallen victim to a betrayal most foul, orchestrated by someone they had trusted and cared for. The investigation now took on a new urgency, to uncover the full extent of the crime and, most importantly, to find Carol and James. The hope for a happy ending was dimming, but the resolve to bring justice to the Suars was stronger than ever. In the sterile interrogation rooms of the police station, the grim truth behind the disappearance of Carol and James Suar began to unravel. Tiffany Cole, her boyfriend Michael J. Jackson, and their accomplice, Alan Lyndall Wade, were separated and questioned intensely. Initially, they presented a facade of innocence, feigning ignorance about the Suars' whereabouts. However, the mounting evidence quickly eroded their defenses. Tiffany, the first to break under the pressure of interrogation, revealed a harrowing tale of greed and betrayal. Sobbing, she claimed that while they had indeed robbed the elderly couple, they had not harmed them beyond that. Her narrative portrayed her and her friends as mere thieves on the run, a story that seemed implausible given the evidence. As the investigation deepened, a fourth accomplice, 19-year-old Bruce Kent Nixon, was implicated in the crime. Bruce, unlike the others, quickly realized the gravity of the situation and, in a bid to avoid harsher punishment, agreed to cooperate with the police. Bruce's confession was chilling. He painted a picture of a meticulously planned and cold-blooded crime that began with Tiffany's seemingly innocent visit to the Suars. During this visit, Carol had inadvertently mentioned the money they had saved from the sale of their Charleston home. This revelation set into motion a devious plan, conceived by Tiffany and Michael, to seize the elderly couple's savings. The detailed account of the crime was horrifying. On the fateful day of the Suars' disappearance, the group, equipped with rope and duct tape purchased by Tiffany, executed their plan with chilling precision. They knocked on the Suars' door, feigning a need for help, only to overpower the couple once inside. Under duress, Carol and James were forced to reveal details about their bank accounts and PIN codes. The attackers, having obtained what they wanted, made the fateful decision to remove the only witnesses to their crime. Bruce described how they loaded the bound and blindfolded couple into the trunk of their own car, driving them to a remote location. There, in a pre-dug grave, they committed an act of unspeakable cruelty. They buried Carol and James alive. The gravity of Bruce's confession sent shockwaves through the investigation team. The heinous nature of the crime was beyond comprehension, a stark contrast to the kindness and generosity that Carol and James had shown Tiffany and her accomplices. The police, armed with Bruce's testimony, launched a frantic search for the burial site. Time was of the essence. If there was any chance of finding the Suars alive, they had to act quickly. But as the search unfolded, hope dwindled. The realization that they were likely too late to save Carol and James was a heavy burden for all involved, particularly Rhonda, who had to grapple with the reality that her mother and stepfather had fallen victim to such a monstrous act. The betrayal was profound, the cruelty unimaginable. Carol and James, who had survived so much, who had found love again against all odds, had met their end in the most tragic and brutal way. The community reeled in shock and grief, struggling to comprehend how such darkness could have emerged from the shadows of a relationship built on kindness and trust. The trial of Tiffany Cole, Michael J. Jackson, Alan Lyndall Wade, and Bruce Kent Nixon for the abduction and murder of Carol and James Suar became a focal point of public and media attention. The courtroom was a tableau of tension and raw emotion as the heinous details of the crime were laid bare. Bruce Nixon, who had cooperated with the police from the outset, fully admitted his involvement. His testimony provided a harrowing account of the events, detailing how a simple act of kindness by the Suars had been exploited and turned into a sinister plot for financial gain. Tiffany Cole's defense painted her as a pawn in Michael's scheme, arguing that she had been led astray by her boyfriend's greed. However, the evidence against her was overwhelming. Her role in planning the crime, from renting the getaway car to participating in the abduction and the subsequent use of the Suars bank cards, was indisputable. The jury saw through the veneer of her defense, recognizing her as a willing participant in the brutal crime. Michael J. Jackson and Alan Lyndall Wade chose to remain largely silent during the trial, letting their attorneys speak on their behalf. However, the silence did little to mitigate the evidence stacked against them. The surveillance footage, the items found in the hotel room, and the damning testimonies painted a clear picture of their guilt. The prosecution, in its closing arguments, underscored the betrayal and brutality at the heart of the crime. Carol and James, two individuals who had faced and overcome tremendous adversity in their lives, had shown nothing but kindness and generosity to Tiffany and her accomplices. In return, they were met with unimaginable cruelty. When the verdicts were read, a palpable wave of emotion swept through the courtroom. Tiffany Cole, Michael J. Jackson, and Alan Lyndall Wade were found guilty on all counts and received the death penalty for their roles in the murder of Carol and James Suar. Bruce Nixon, due to his cooperation with the authorities and his role in leading them to the burial site, was spared the death penalty but received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The sentences, while bringing a measure of justice, did little to alleviate the deep sense of loss and tragedy that permeated the case. The community, which had followed every twist and turn of the trial, was left to grapple with the stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly normal relationships. For Rhonda, the verdicts brought closure to a painful chapter in her life, but the loss of her mother and stepfather in such a brutal manner was a wound that would never fully heal. The trial had laid bare the worst of human nature, but in the memory of Carol and James, there remained a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit and the capacity for love and forgiveness in the face of unimaginable adversity. In the aftermath of the trial and the sentencing of Tiffany Cole, Michael J. Jackson, Alan Lyndall Wade, and Bruce Kent Nixon, the community of Charleston, and indeed those far beyond, struggled to come to terms with the tragic fate that had befallen Carol and James Suar. The echoes of the crime reverberated, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the depths of human cruelty. Yet, amid the darkness of this tragedy, the enduring legacy of Carol and James Suar emerged as a beacon of resilience, love, and undying spirit. Their story, marked by trials, reunions, and an unbreakable bond, became a source of inspiration for many. In Charleston, where their journey began and flourished, tributes poured in. Friends, family, and even strangers touched by their story came together to honor their memory. A memorial service was held, not just as a farewell, but as a celebration of the lives they led, the challenges they overcame, and the love they shared that defied time and tragedy. Rhonda, carrying the weight of her loss, became a custodian of her mother's and stepfather's legacy. She spoke openly about the strength and courage her mother had shown throughout her life, and of James's unwavering love and resilience. In sharing their story, she hoped to offer solace and inspiration to others facing their own battles. The community, united in grief, took steps to ensure that the legacy of Carol and James would endure. A scholarship fund was set up in their names, aimed at supporting those who had overcome personal adversities or had been victims of domestic violence. It was a fitting tribute to a couple who had faced so much and yet had remained steadfast in their compassion and kindness. The local council, moved by the couple's story, dedicated a small park in their neighborhood in their honor. A plaque was installed, bearing their names and a brief account of their story. A story of love rekindled, lives well lived, and spirits unbroken despite the odds. The park became a place of reflection, a place where the community could remember not just the tragedy of their end, but the beauty of their lives. In the years that followed, Carol and James's story continued to resonate. Documentaries and articles were produced, capturing the essence of their journey, a testament to the power of the human heart to love, to endure, and to find joy even in the darkest of times. As the anniversaries of their passing came and went, the memory of Carol and James Suar remained undimmed. They had become more than just victims of a tragic crime. They were symbols of resilience, of the capacity for love to overcome the greatest of challenges, and of the indomitable strength of the human spirit. In the heart of Charleston, and in the hearts of those they touched, Carol and James lived on. Their story, a poignant reminder of both the darkness and light in our world, continued to inspire and to remind everyone that, even in the face of overwhelming adversity, love and kindness can leave an enduring impact that transcends time.